stories, spirituality, pathways, and aliens. You're here on The Long Road Home.
Hello, everyone, and welcome again to The Long Road Home, Episode 2 in our two-part series on Greys and Grey Alien Abductions.
Grey aliens.
How you doing, Emily?
I'm doing great. I'm ready to learn a little bit about grey alien abductions.
Awesome.
What about you? How you doing?
I'm feeling ready for the end times.
Yeah. You've been pretty amped up, huh?
Yeah, definitely. If you're listening to this post-apocalypse, we're here with you for the long haul.
We're going to figure out a way to get this to you no matter what.
I'll carry it to you in a backpack if I have to. Just please like my content.
We'll train ravens to send it to you
Please.
via scroll, the transcripts.
Content is king, even post-apocalyptic world. Well, anyway, this is episode 2. Welcome to it. But before we get going, we would like to take a second and just recommend a documentary that we saw the other day to you.
Yeah, we've been doing a lot of research trying to make sure that we have as much information, as much accurate information to bring to you guys as we can. And so we're watching a lot of things, we're reading a lot of things, and one of the things that we watched was The Curse of the Man Who Sees UFOs.
And let me tell you, it is one of the most endearing documentaries I've seen in a long time.
So pleasantly surprised.
Absolutely.
When we first turned it on, I wasn't sure what we were getting into, especially with that introduction there where it's just clips of his UFO sightings. And he's just going, holy shit.
Holy fuck.
Fuck, did you look at that, man?
That?
What the fuck?
Holy
What is
shit.
happening?
Did you fucking see that?
Did you see that over there? Tell me you see that, man. Tell me you see that fucking shit. Draws, did you see it? Did you see aliens too?
Oh, no.
Hello, everyone. We're back.
I don't know if you noticed, but our dog heard something. Anyway.
Yeah, that's what happens when you're recording in your one-bedroom apartment with your two doggos.
There's so much space here. That's my favorite thing about my apartment is all the space.
So much room for activities.
So, The Curse of the Man Who Sees UFOs follows a guy named Cristo Roppolo and his claims to have been videotaping and communicating with UFOs for several years in Monterey, California.
It's a great, great movie.
It is just, the guy seems so wacky at first, but then you learn about him and his story and how he came to be in Monterey and the things that led him to that point. And a lot of the footage that he has got he's so genuinely invested in, and it becomes a beautiful story.
Hundreds and hundreds of videos.
So much. And the whole thing started when a guy named Justin Garr got a bunch of film sent to him when he picked up a job from Cristo. He didn't know him at all at the time. They're very close friends. I don't really want to say anything else about it other than go watch it because it was really, really heartfelt and got me teary-eyed. I never in my life thought I would get teary-eyed over a wily-looking man who just loved aliens.
You will laugh. You will cry. Go watch The Curse of the Man Who Sees UFOs.
100%. Go watch it right now. Turn this off. Go watch it. Come back.
And speaking of people who see UFOs, this week we're talking a little more in depth about alien abductions and encounters. To clarify, gray alien encounters and abductions. And this week we're going to be starting out with the first ever documented gray alien encounter / abduction. We're going to circle back on over to Antonio Villas Boas, who we talked a little bit, we touched briefly on in episode number 1, but I have a lot more to share with you about his encounter. So let's circle back on over to Senor Antonio in Brazil. He himself had a very, very interesting encounter, and I'd like to tell you more about it. So Antonio, the year was 1957. It was October 16th. He was a farmer and working at night to avoid the hot temperatures of the day. He was plowing fields near, again, bear with me, São Francisco de Sales.
San Francisco de Sales. Sure. The year was 1957. It was October 16th, and Antonio was working at night to avoid the hot temperatures of the day. He was a farmer in Brazil, you see. Okay, nope.
Brazil.
No, we're going to say that again.
Okay.
Antonio was working at night on the farm to avoid hot temperatures of the day. The year was 1957. It was October 16th. So he was plowing fields near San Francisco de Sales when he saw what he described as a red star in the night sky. According to a story, the star approached his position, growing in size until it became recognizable as a roughly circular or egg-shaped aerial craft, with a red light at its front and a rotating cupola on top.
What is a cupola?
It's essentially like just a dome on the top of the ship.
Gotcha.
The craft began descending to land in the field, extending 3, quote, legs as it did. At that point, Boas decided to run from the scene. So he sees this craft coming into the field that he was plowing. It was night. It was hot. He was just trying to get his job done. And this red glowing egg orb comes out of the sky and lands on 3 legs in the same very field that he's working. So apparently at first he attempted to leave the scene on his tractor, but when its lights and engines died after traveling only a short distance,
The EMP technology.
poor Antonio, man, he was just trying to get away and
He did
everything
the right
broke
thing.
down.
I would have just left too.
But so then he hopped out. He hopped off of the tractor and decided to continue on foot.
Yep.
3 beings joined in first subduing Boas, and then they dragged him inside of the craft. So not looking good for Antonio here. Scary night,
Not
to say
yet.
the least. But things take an interesting turn. So let's see what happens next. Once inside the craft, Boas says that he was stripped of his clothes and covered from head to toe with a strange gel.
We hope you like this. It's called Sliquid.
It's called KY jelly, baby. Well, I don't know. Maybe. We'll see. So he was then led to a large semicircular room through a doorway that had strange red symbols written over it. Later, he claims that he was able to memorize the symbols, and he depicts them. Again, check out the Insta, and you'll see the images that Boas remembers. But in this room, the beings took samples of Boas's blood from his chin. After this, he was taken to a third room and left alone for around a half hour. During this time, some kind of gas was pumped into the room, and it made Boas violently ill.
That's shitty. So, did you ever, when you were younger, have people like stick, God, how did they even do it? They like put a lot of suction on your chin or somewhere, and they'd make like a big raspberry.
You have a hickey on your chin? I've had a hickey before. Is that essentially what we're talking about?
I mean, kind of, yeah. I
mean,
guess.
essentially, that's what it was.
We just used to like do it to one another, but not with our mouths. I don't know how we did it anymore.
I think it's not with your mouths. Just sucking on each other's chins. It'd be so weird. Well, no, it's interesting that he says that they withdrew blood. That they withdrew blood from his chin because something else that happens to his chin here a little bit later. Essentially, he was brought into a ship, stripped naked, covered in gel. Then they took blood from his chin, and then they threw him in this other room, gassed him, and he became violently ill. Shortly after this, he claimed that he was joined in the room by another humanoid. This one, however, was female, very attractive, and also naked. So she was the same height as the other beings he had encountered, with a small, pointed chin and large blue cat-like eyes. Again, remember, we said this earlier, but it's just worth restating here. The hair on her head was long and white, similar to platinum blonde, and her underarm and pubic hair were bright red.
And just like I like my women.
Crotch. So Boas said he was strongly attracted to the woman, and the two had sexual intercourse. So it doesn't say in this Wikipedia article that I'm referencing now, but in another article that I read, it does say that they had intercourse twice.
Hell
so good for Antonio.
Oh, Antonio. And then look, it says they didn't kiss.
They didn't kiss, but she nipped him on the chin.
Nipped.
So clearly the chin
She's just barking the whole time. Me.
But But clearly the chin is significant in their alien culture. I'm not sure what it means to them, but
It's like
again with the chin. Again with the chin,
in Men
you
in
know?
Black. He's a Balchinian.
I don't know that
Nothing?
reference.
Okay, yeah, never.
I watched Men in Black, but
Ignore.
I don't know if I'd be able to remember any quotes from Men in Black.
It's a fist fight.
I know,
and-
it's hypocritical, I'm sure.
No. It's just it's one. I can't remember which one it is now, but they're like in a huge fight with this alien dude, and he's a Balchinian, so they just fucking hit him in the chin because that's where his balls are. That's the joke.
Like Peter Griffin.
Yes.
So, this next part is also interesting and worth noting. When it was all over, the female smiled at Boas, rubbed her belly, and gestured upwards.
Ugh.
Boas took this to mean that she was going to raise their children in space.
And that child was David Bowie.
This part's pretty unfortunate here. The female seemed relieved that the, quote, task was over. And this upset Antonio. You know, he felt like he had done a good job. So he himself said that he felt angered by the situation because he thought, I had been more than a, quote, good stallion to the humanoids.
I did so bad. Oh God, my covered in jelly.
So,
I didn't do
the deed
anything
is
right.
done. The deed is done. Number 2, they go around again, and she smiles at him kindly and probably pityingly, I guess we can infer, and rubs her belly and points at the sky and then just goes like, whew,
I'll call you.
glad that's over. It's not you, it's me.
Can't do anything right.
Poor Antonio. Yeah. Boas said that he was given back his clothing and taken on a tour of the ship by the humanoids. During this tour, he said that he attempted to take a clock-like device as proof of his encounter, but unfortunately, he was caught by the humanoids and prevented from doing so. He was then promptly escorted off the ship and watched as it took off, glowing brightly.
Just covered in goop.
Covered in goop. He came twice in a short period of time. Unfortunately, though, it was not enough for his alien counterpart. He tried to steal something and was given the boot.
What else do you do when they're not impressed? You just take something and leave.
I mean, I'd want something for my time. I think at that point, if it was not appreciated, I'd be like,
demand.
okay, I need payment then.
I demand payment.
I mean, I'm just saying. So when Boas returned home, he discovered that 4 hours had passed.
Wow. It's a lot of sex.
Antonio, though, he goes on to bigger and better things. He later becomes a lawyer and he gets married and he has 4 kids. He stuck to the story of his alleged abduction for his entire life up until the year he died, 1991.
Wow. Sounds like he really turned his life around.
He really did, he didn't
let that stop him.
He didn't let that stop him. He held on to his strong stride and just kept on trucking, But he definitely had an experience of a lifetime. So that is our abduction number 1 story, Antonio Villas Boas. Chad, would you like to tell us a little bit more about Betty and Barney Hill?
Yeah, definitely. So I pulled most of the information about Betty and Barney Hill from a book called Captured, The Betty and Barney Hill UFO Experience. I think I mentioned it earlier. It was written by Stanton T. Friedman and actually Betty's niece, Kathleen Martin, which I thought was really interesting. She devoted a lot of her time to talk about Betty's story. So the Hills lived in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. Barney was employed by the United States Postal Service, and Betty was a social worker. They were both active in their Unitarian congregation, and they were both members of the NAACP, and Barney was very involved with civil rights at the time. So the Hills had planned a vacation to Montreal and had left on September 17th, 1961. They brought along their dog named Delcy. Their vacation was very short-lived, however, and on September 19th, 1961, they had decided to head back home because of a couple of reasons. The first was Barney had gotten lost in Montreal and was having trouble deciphering the French signs. He'd got turned around twice, and so instead of going into Montreal like they planned, they had been driving east, and Barney was looking for a hotel at that point that would accept Delcy. They had also heard that Tropical Storm Esther was heading up the coast, and they were very concerned about their home. So they decided that night that they were just going to head back. They would be getting home at approximately 3 a.m. according to their watches. The next part comes directly from the book. Betty's interest was aroused by what she at first thought was a falling star until it suddenly came to a stop in the southwestern sky. As it inched its way upward, she thought she was taking in her first observation of a satellite. Her father was excited about the space program, frequently venturing outside at night to search the sky for satellites. When it left its even course, ascended towards the moon, and stopped, Betty's curiosity piqued. This unique craft so sparked her curiosity that she insisted that Barney stop at the side of the road in order to look at it himself. She was dumbfounded as she observed it take on an unconventional, erratic flight pattern and travel across the face of the moon. By the time she handed the binoculars to Barney, the object had again changed course and seemed to be rapidly descending in their direction. So at this point, Barney wants to play it off. He's a very conservative thinker. He's realist. And he doesn't see this as anything unusual yet.
Yeah. Barney's like, no, that's a plane.
Exactly.
It's fine. It's a plane.
Yes. So as he drove south on Route 3, Betty and Barney were awestruck by the perplexing object. It rapidly changed direction, ascended and descended vertically, and hovered motionless in the sky. This enigmatic phenomenon both piqued Barney's interest and confounded his sensibility. His intelligent, no-nonsense attitude left no room for the nonsensical belief in flying saucers. So at this point, he's, like I said, he's playing it off. He's trying to be cool about it. Doesn't really seem, he's trying to be nonchalant. Doesn't care. But as they continue to go down Route 3, the craft seems to be following along, and it starts to concern him. Now, as they motored around a slight curve near Indian Head, a natural granite rock formation resembling a Native American profile, just south of the narrow valley through Franconia Notch, they entered a wide expanse. Almost directly in their path, the couple encountered the flattened, circular disc hovering silently an estimated 80 to 100 feet above their vehicle. So at this point, Barney does become concerned. He brought the car to a halt in the middle of the road. He grabs his binoculars. He opens the car door, and quickly, in an arcing movement, the craft shifted from its location directly ahead and rested above the treetops in an adjacent field. Barney grabbed Betty's handgun and walked over towards it. The craft was huge. It was probably 60 to 80 feet in diameter, and he observed a double row of rectangular windows extending across the rim. Now, as he approached it, two red lights at the end of the fin-like structure parted from the sides of the craft, and it tilted towards Barney. So during hypnosis, we find out towards this point, he feels locked in place and he can't move. It's almost as if one of the people inside the craft is telling him to stay where he is. Yeah, so he heard that in his head. Really interesting. He is able, however, to escape the grasp of whatever has him, and he runs back to the car, and he tells Betty, "We gotta go. They're coming for us." And they drive off. As they take off and they're running down the highway, they suddenly hear these rhythmic buzzing tones that seem to bounce off the trunk of their vehicle, and they sensed a penetrating vibration. This happened once. A little further down the road, it happened again. After that, everything gets very fuzzy for Betty and Barney. There are vague memories of encountering a roadblock, of seeing a huge, fiery red-orange orb resting upon the ground, and feeling a desire for human contact that preoccupied their thoughts. They looked for an open restaurant to no avail, so they drove on through Concord, picked up Route 4, and made a beeline to Portsmouth, expecting to arrive at approximately 3 a.m. The Hills were surprised to notice that as they crossed into Portsmouth, that dawn was streaking across the sky. Turns out they were not home until approximately 5 in the morning, or a little afterwards.
Gotcha.
So
a couple hours off track.
Yes. So when the Hills got home, they felt very unusual. They decided to take a shower. They retrieved some of their personal articles from the car, and they went to sleep to just try and feel better. So when they woke, they decided that they were both going to go into different rooms and draw what they saw and see what they looked like. Turns out they were very similar to one another, according to them. There were also some very strange things physically that were off once they woke up and had done this. The first was that Betty's new dress had been torn. Pretty bad.
Oh, girl, bummer. I know that, Phil.
Yeah, not great. Dresses.
The dress had been torn pretty bad. I thought you were saying that it was bad that it had been torn. Either way.
Either way, it's not great. Yeah.
But do we have any descriptors on?
We will soon.
Okay.
I'll
let you continue. Yeah,
Yes.
You get into it.
First, there were several highly polished half-dollar-sized circles on the trunk of their car. Betty's dress had been torn in several places, and Barney had what they called pickers or burrs stuck to the sides of his pants, which that could be attributed to him wandering through the woods to get a better look at the vehicle, or that could be attributed to him wandering through the woods to get a better look at the UFO. What that could not explain, however, was the tops of his shoes were badly scuffed, and they were his good dress shoes, so there was no reason for them to be that way. Noticing all these strange things, Betty decided to confide in her sister Janet, who in the past had also claimed to have seen something strange in the sky. She explained to Janet what happened, and Janet listened and told her that she would reach out to some people for help and see what she could find.
So am I correct in saying that Janet herself had witnessed a UFO or a unidentified flying object?
Yes, she had in the past. I can't remember when exactly off the top of my head, but she had, not only her, but some other people that were with her, I think it was her neighbors, saw something floating erratically through the sky that seemed blimp-shaped to them.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm. Really weird. So Janet does reach out to some people, and she ends up contacting the wife. She ends up contacting the wife of a physicist that she knows. After speaking with the physicist, the wife comes back and tells her to place a compass in different parts of the metallic car and see what happens. Betty takes their advice and grabs a compass and goes out to the car and starts to stick it all over the car. When she does, the compass starts to spin erratically. She thinks maybe she's holding it funny. She doesn't know what's going on, so she just sticks it on the car. Same thing happens. In an excerpt from her diary, Betty described what happened next. I took the compass and went out to the car. Barney refused to go, saying that he was trying to forget what happened. It was still raining, but I could see my car clearly under the streetlight in front of my home. I walked around it, holding the compass and not knowing what I was looking for. When I came to the trunk area, I saw many highly polished spots about the size of a $50 or silver dollar. The car was wet from the rain, but these spots were clearly showing. I wondered what they were. I placed the compass over them, and it began spinning and spinning. I thought it must be the way I was balancing the compass, so I placed it on the car and took my hand away. The compass was really spinning and continued to do this. As I was watching this, I was filled with an unexplained feeling of absolute terror. I was standing there in the rain under the streetlight and telling myself, don't scream, keep calm, and don't be afraid. Everything is all right.
Ooh, chilling.
Yes, so this little event really got underneath her skin.
You mean just this event of like discovering these spots on her car?
Yes,
Right.
And watching the compass just spin in circles on top of them. It was very weird.
She just started to realize how something wasn't right.
Yeah, how strange what had happened to them. Really,
Ooh.
what happened to them? Yeah.
Oh, I just got some goosebumps just really thinking about it, putting myself in Betty's shoes there. And the whole time her husband's inside and he's like, I just want to forget.
I ain't
I'm
touching
in
that.
denial of this. Oh.
Leave that shit alone, Betty.
And then she's like, fuck. Oh, no.
It was very, very unsettling for her. I did forget to mention that Janet had also, it just so happened that a police officer came and spoke with her right after she talked with Betty. And he told Janet that anything strange like that should be reported to Peace Air Force Base. And that's eventually what they did after all of this occurred. And it was
P-I-E-C-E or P-E-A-C-E?
P-E-A-S-E.
Oh, weird. Okay.
Yeah, so Peace Air Force Base. So after this, they were contacted by some very high up people in the Air Force. I'm not going to go into great detail about them because that's not what this podcast is.
So my question is, though, do you think that they were contacted by these people because of Betty's sister? Or like how did they become aware of Betty and Barney's situation?
Well, they contacted the 100th Bomb Wing at Peace Air Force Base.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. So after Betty and Barney contacted the Air Force Base, then they got in connection with these higher
Exactly.
people.
And yeah, the first was Major Paul Henderson. He talked to them over the phone, asked them a couple of questions. And he was just sort of the beginning. They spoke to several people throughout the course of this experience. Because of this, though, they were put into what's called Project Blue Book, which is the government's giant Bible of UFO encounters, basically. Mm-hmm. I think it's important to say that Barney did decide to go see a psychotherapist
after the events had occurred. So he was already seeing somebody about this during this time.
Gotcha.
But eventually they did decide to undergo hypnosis. It was recommended by a friend of theirs who was sort of an amateur hypnotist. An amateur hypnotist. But he told them that he was not going to have anything to do with it. Eventually,
Wait, no. So what happened with the amateur?
Oh, he's just the one that told them.
So he had told them about it, but then he came back and said, "But you should see a professional hypnotist." Is that right?
Exactly.
Okay.
So they talked to him about it, and he was just like, I'm not going to do this. You need a professional. And that's who they found in Dr. Benjamin Simon. Now, Dr. Benjamin Simon was the person that did the initial hypnosis of Betty and Barney and brought up a lot of information from their missing time. I think it's also really important to note that this guy was not a quack. Benjamin Simon was a Russian immigrant who came to the United States with his parents. He had a bachelor's degree from Stanford. He had received a Master of Science degree in chemistry also from Stanford. And 4 years later, he was awarded a Doctor of Medicine degree from Washington University School of Medicine. He had always had an interest in hypnosis since he was an undergraduate and went through a psychology experiment that he had volunteered for. During his psychiatric residency, he used hypnosis as a therapeutic procedure, and eventually he found a more extensive use for it while he was a consultant in neuropsychiatry at the General Dispensary in New York. It is there that he received training in the medical use of hypnosis. During World War II, he was a lieutenant colonel in the Army. He was awarded the Army Commendation Medal, the American Campaign Medal, and the Victory Medal. So this was a legitimate doctor. He eventually developed a technique of hypnosis that put people into an extremely deep trance, and he had layers of hypnosis.
Gotcha.
According to him,
like phases or stages of
yes.
this hypnosis
So you
process.
could.
Okay.
Some people were sensitive to it and could go deeper, and some couldn't. If they couldn't get into a deep trance, though, sometimes he would use narcosynthesis, which is drug induced.
Yeah.
So he would use things like quote unquote truth serums like barbiturates and sodium pentothal to make them go deeper.
Wow.
Yes.
Intense.
So yeah. So he was legitimate. He had a lot of different techniques. Betty and Barney Hill did not need any sort of help, though.
Sounds like they were pretty open-minded individuals.
Yeah, they definitely were, and the hypnotist really was able to work with them. What they found, though, during the hypnosis was some very strange descriptions of what happened to them, and I'm going to just sort of briefly talk about that.
Okay.
So we'll start when they encounter a roadblock, according to them. During the recall of Betty and Barney, they start to talk about a giant ball of light in the middle of the road.
Right.
So that's when they stop their car, right? The number differs initially, but they both describe a group of things in front of the ball of light. They split into two groups, and they come around the car, and they pull them out of the car. Now, this comes directly from Betty's recall. I'm struggling to wake up. I am at the bottom of a deep well, and I must get out. Everything is black. I am fighting to become conscious. Slowly and gradually, I start to become conscious. I struggle to open my eyes for a moment, and they close again. I keep fighting. I am dazed, and I have a faraway feeling. Then, I win the battle, and my eyes are opened. I am amazed. She was being escorted along a path in the woods by two of the small men at that point.
Now, did she describe how was she walking along with them?
She was not. She was basically getting drug along.
Right. I'm just wondering why Betty's shoes weren't scuffed up.
Or
if they were.
I don't know. She was fighting them. I know that for a fact. She was trying really hard to resist, and they were like, this is going to be easier for you, and you'll get back to your car faster if you'll just come with us.
Gotcha.
Yes. So she does look over and notices that Barney he looks asleep, and they are dragging him towards it. Eventually, during Barney's recall, he states that it felt like he was floating, and he knew that he was moving, but his legs weren't moving. And this made Betty really mad. She was not happy that Barney wasn't fighting back. She was so mad that eventually she was like, well, he's not fighting, so I'm not going to fight. And that's really when she was just like, let's just fucking go to this thing, get this over with.
Whoa.
Yeah. So
Betty, that's a little petty, girl. You don't even. A little petty. You just struggled to get your eyes open, and now you're like, well, why isn't his eyes open? Harsh.
There's a lot that goes into what happens to them once they enter the craft. we're just going to jump around a little bit through Betty and Barney's recall through hypnosis. So Betty describes this. I felt my shoes being removed and my pants being opened, and I could hear a humming-like sound that they
I thought
seemed...
she was wearing a dress.
Oh, she, wait, is this Barney? Oh, I'm sorry, this is Barney.
No,
Thank
that's
you.
okay. I thought that I had just found a...
Blew the top off
I
of
just
this
blew
thing.
the top. I found a major discrepancy.
Yeah, so this is Barney's, this is his physical examination inside the craft.
Gotcha.
I felt my shoes being removed and my pants being opened, and I could hear a humming-like sound that they seemed to be making. They pulled my pants all the way down to where my legs were. I could feel them turning me over and putting something in my rectum. It was like a tube. It was not painful. What does that say about Barney?
Barney.
I thought it was just a little larger than a pencil. I felt it go in very easily, and then it was withdrawn. They looked at my back, and I could feel them touching my skin right down my back as if they were counting my spinal column. I felt something touch right at the base of my spine, like a finger pushing, a single finger. I could only hear this mum, rapid, humming-like sound, and then I turned over again. My mouth was opened, and I could feel 2 fingers pulling it back. And then I heard as if some more men came in, and I could hear them rustling around on the left side of the table I was laying on, and something scratched very lightly, like a stick on my arm. These men left, and I was left with what I thought were 3 men, the 2 that had brought me in and the other one that seemed to follow these 2 men. I could tell that there was more than one person in the room, but only one man seemed to be moving around my body all the time. Now, in another hypnosis session, Barney actually describes his abductor's vocalization. Now, in another account, Barney actually describes the way that these people, these beings talk, right? They make this really goofy...
So do you think that it's similar to those characters on Sesame Street?
Yes. Yes, I think so.
Do you think it's similar to Antonio's experience with? Is that
The barking?
Is that what
So-
they meant when he said barking or yelping?
In the book, he describes it as a quivering oh, 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 oh,
But quivering, so ho 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 ho.
something like that,
Like
I
that?
think. Probably. That's what I imagine.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
They weren't talking to him because fuck him, I guess. He's just there for the probing. They got other things to worry about than making friends with Barney.
Yeah, I'm sorry. If you're conducting a science experiment, do you talk to the frog laying on the table? I
Right.
don't think so.
Betty's account tells us something similar as well. She describes them as a sound that went up and down. It was like humming, but it wasn't like how we hum. Does that make sense?
In a way.
Yeah.
In a way, yeah. So I'm picturing like a lower pitched dolphin.
Kind of, yeah, I think that's a good description. Now, she also did say that the leader and the examiner didn't make these humming sounds like the rest of the crew. They were like words or sounds of words. Eventually, during another hypnosis session, she claims that the examiner, I believe, talks to her in English.
Right, but that's more like telepathically. Whenever
Well-
she's hearing English, it's coming through her mind, right?
It could be. That's one of the inconsistencies in her story, is that no one is entirely sure how the aliens could know English because they don't have like a good grasp. They're asking her questions about colors, like what is yellow and things like that. So how could they have a good grasp of English if they don't even know shit like that?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah, so there's also a recollection of these events from Betty, who was in a different examining room. Barney did have something else happen to him, and it was a little bit on the kinkier side.
Okay.
Yeah. According to him, in a conscious interview with Dr. Simon, he was not under hypnosis. He explained, I have the most peculiar feeling that something was placed against my genital parts. It was more as if it was in a solution of something that was there, that had substance to it, that had body to it.
So when you say that, he means that there was something like almost like a cup but it had liquid in it, like when you say there was a solution, is that what you think that he means?
I don't know. I think he's talking about
solution to it, like it was like there was
they stuck a fleshlight on his dick.
yeah, right. It wasn't just like a cup, an empty cup. It was like
No, it was like
something of substance.
An alien with fleshlight. Just going, come on, Barney.
Interesting sound choice.
According to him, he said there was a tug or a pressure or something, but there was not an erection or an ejaculation, and no pleasure was associated with it. I don't think any of that's true.
Well, because he does later state that he believes a sperm sample to have been taken. So
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but how are you going to have a sperm sample taken without a moment of orgasm?
It's a special fleshlight to do that.
I guess so. Or Barney's a little embarrassed, which I think that it's kind of the latter here. In
think so.
other stories that you read, I had interpreted them to be saying that he had experienced an orgasm. So
I don't know. This is I'm just reading what they tell me.
you're reading what his niece
Yeah,
wrote.
what his niece wrote.
Uh-huh.
She probably wasn't super comfortable with this. Afterwards, something did happen to him because of this, and he had a concentric circle of wart-like growths appear on his groin shortly after this encounter. It was in the exact location where the cup-like appliance was pressed against him, and he had never before had these growths. Now,
So he walked out with genital warts.
yes.
Interesting. So Antonio actually had a similar experience.
What?
In the weeks following his encounter, he claims to have experienced different protuberances or boils or warts or whatever you'd like to call them. Now, the warts that he described, I'm not sure if we have color details there for Barney Hill, but Antonio describes his warts as having a yellow pus-filled center with a, quote, hyperchromatic violet tinge
Oh my
ring
God.
around it. So it was a purple
Jeez.
ring with a yellow center.
Yikes.
And
That's very
they
weird.
were painful when touched, with a yellowish, thin, waterish discharge.
Oh my God. That's
And he
nasty.
encountered them. Actually,
Antonio.
I said he experienced that for months following his encounter.
Holy cow. That's so
Yeah,
gross.
I'll let you get back to Barney's warts, but I thought I'd just touch on Antonio's there.
No, that's crazy. Well, he did end up having them removed. This was not a
He
small.
had them removed?
Yeah, they were purely aesthetical. The doctor diagnosed them as venereal warts, and there were 21 of them. They were
Oh, buddy.
3/4 of an inch each.
Whoa.
They were fucking huge.
Those are huge.
That's so nasty.
Oh.
Yeah, that fleshlight had not been washed in some time.
Did he got an alien STD?
Yeah, it's nasty. That's so. Now, I think talking about Antonio and Barney, this brings up a good point about what the Greys are doing. There's a lot of different
Spreading
speculation.
their nasty germs all over the world.
Yeah. People think that they do a lot of this DNA collection, quote unquote DNA selection or DNA collection, because they're making hybrids. That is another deep dive. It's crazy. Go look into that if you want to, and I'm sure eventually we'll do another episode on that as well. That's going to require some book learning because there's not a lot about that on the internet, at least not that I can find. Now, Betty also recalled an examining room story, and this is a description of what happened to her during the time that she spent inside the ship. I have a light blue dress on, and they push up the sleeve of my dress, and they look at my arm here, and they look at my arm. They turn my arm over, and they look at it. They have a machine. I don't know what it is. They bring the machine over, and they put it, I don't know what kind of machine. It's something like a microscope, only a microscope with a big lens. And they put I don't know, I had an idea they were taking a picture of my skin, and they both look through this machine here and there, and then they talk. I don't know. I couldn't understand what they were saying. And then they took something like a letter opener, only it wasn't. They scraped my arm here. They scraped, and they looked like little skin. You know how your skin gets dry and flaky sometimes, like little particles of skin? There was something like a little piece of cellophane plastic, something like that. And they put what came off on the plastic. The examiner opens my eyes and looks in them with a light. And he opens my mouth, and he looks at my throat and my teeth, and he looks in my ears. And then he takes a swab or Q-tip, and he puts it in my left ear. And then he puts this on another piece of material. The leader takes it and rolls it up and puts it on the top drawer. Oh, and then he feels my hair, then the back of my neck. And they take a couple of strands of my hair, and they pull it out, and he gives this to the leader, and he wraps that up and puts that in the top drawer. Then he takes something that may be scissors, I don't know what it is, and they cut a piece of my hair. They cut off a piece of it, and he gives it to them. Then he feels my neck and through my shoulders around my collarbone. They take off my shoes, and they look at my feet and my hands. The light is very bright, and so my eyes aren't open. I'm still a little scared, too. I'm not particularly interested in looking at them. And during hypnosis, she states that she kept her eyes closed during this experience. She would open them briefly and get glimpses of what was happening around her, and that's why her recall is so spotty. So there is more to what happened to Betty. I'm going to skip ahead just a little bit to what is known as the pregnancy test.
What?
Yeah. This one's... I think of all the things that happened, this definitely skeeves me out the most. Betty describes a long needle. She says it was 4 to 6 inches long.
Oh,
There
I
was
do
a-
know this one.
Yeah, there was a tube attached to it, and they didn't leave it in very long, just a second. The examiner told her that she wouldn't feel any pain, but they took this needle and they injected it into her abdomen.
Into her belly button.
Yeah,
Right?
into her belly button. It did not feel good. They were wrong. She freaked out when they did it, but apparently the examiner came over and like waved his hand over her, and she didn't feel any pain after that. A lot of people describe this as the insertion of a needle during, I'm going to struggle with this, amniocentesis, which is a medical procedure now administered on a routine basis to determine the genetic makeup of a fetus. So this was sort of the last part of her examination. Afterwards, she did actually speak with the leader, who she believed to be the leader. This is where she was shown the map. She had a discussion with him about where they were from, where she was from. This is something that we had talked about earlier. There are some discrepancies between what she saw during her hypnosis and she had been having nightmares, but overall it was pretty much the same story. She spoke with him in detail about where they were from. He told her, like, you're not going to remember any of this. She wanted to take a book with her that she had found. He was going to let her, but the short, stubby guy that she had described as one of the beings on the ship got really mad, wouldn't let her take it. And then they were both escorted off the ship. And that's where the abduction part of their story ends. There is a lot more that we could go into, but that is going to be for another day. The Hills, they did try to go back to their regular lives after all this. They were willing to discuss the encounter with anyone who wanted to know, but they never tried to seek publicity. But they got it nonetheless. Eventually, Barney Hill did die of a stroke.
He was 46.
Wow, he was just 46?
He was 46
They
years
got married
old.
when he was like 16. Holy shit.
I believe. I think
Yeah,
that
you're
was
right.
accurate, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. He had a lot of health issues after this abduction. Now, who's to say what
It
caused
wasn't
them?
a stroke, was it? Wasn't
According-
it a hemorrhage? A
yeah.
cerebral hemorrhage? Is that
Maybe-
the same as a stroke?
I think so.
Okay.
You told me this, which I thought was, I hadn't put the dots together. A lot of people that have experiences like this have cerebral hemorrhages.
Right. I believe it was Philip K. Dick. I'm just remembering this based off of another episode or an episode of Last Podcast on the Left that we had listened to.
We love you, last podcast on
We
the
love
left.
you guys. You're awesome. Philip K. Dick believes to or claimed to have had an alien encounter where there was a pink beam of light that was shown on him that imparted clairvoyance and wisdom and intelligence. And then later, at an early age, I believe he was in his 50s, he died of a stroke.
Yeah, and that also led him to write Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep?
Yeah, he was a crazy sci-fi writer. I believe that his experience with the paranormal is what inspired him to write these novels. But essentially, I've personally noticed or noted a trend in people that have believed or claimed to have had these encounters later. It's like their brain just can't even handle it anymore.
It just pops. So yeah, Barney died of a stroke, and Betty actually died of cancer in October of 2004, and she was 85 years old, and she never remarried.
No.
They loved each other dearly, and their story is extremely interesting, and there's so much more to it, and the things that they saw, and the people they interacted with, and what those people believe, and there's just so much. And I hope one day that we can do a just very extensive look at what happened to them. So that's the summary of the Betty and Barney Hill abduction story.
But obviously, there are a lot more gray alien abduction stories out there in the world.
Yeah, there are tons.
Actually, to be a little more specific, among reports of alien encounters, gray aliens make up around 12% of the reports in the UK, 48% in continental Europe,
50% in Australia, and 73% in the United States.
Yeah, they're definitely the species that we interact with the most.
That's right. They're everywhere. Just like I said.
All over the place. So there's a whole lot of different theories that tries to explain what exactly these encounters are. One that's becoming more popular is basically that it is a group psychosis, kind of, or that the energy that we're putting out into the world is creating these visions or these beings, and they're manifesting themselves to us through psychology and energy.
So essentially, the theory is that these gray aliens are like a tulpa?
Yes, I believe that's a good way to explain it. And what's a tulpa for those people that don't know?
Okay, so a tulpa is a concept in mysticism and the paranormal of a being or object which is created through spiritual or mental powers. It was adapted by 20th century theosophists from Tibetan sprolpa, which means emanation or manifestation.
Yeah, a tulpa is a great way to articulate what that is trying to describe, I think, yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, there's also, there's a ton. One that I think is really weird is the mother hypothesis, which this is something I actually learned during my time in college, that when you're a baby and you're looking up at people, you don't really see faces. You see images, and slowly, as you see more and more faces, you start to make connections to eyes and noses and mouths and things like that. So that's another theory to explain what exactly we're seeing during these encounters. It's something that we physically can't bring together into our brain, and so it tries to fill in the holes, and you end up with a gray or an alien in general.
On that note, an additional theory to sort of explain away these abduction experiences is that these abductees are actually having flashbacks from a time where maybe they were under anesthesia and woke up during surgery. So a little creepy. And I can't find the exact date here, but I believe it was within a year or two prior to his alien experience. Barney Hill had a tonsillectomy. And so the theory is that during this tonsillectomy, he woke up while under general anesthesia to see distorted beings operating on him, squinting underneath a very, very bright light, etc., etc. So that one's an interesting theory. Again, I would prefer to lean towards gray aliens are real.
Yes.
But that is another theory, is that these abductees are remembering these traumatic experiences of waking up during surgery.
No, I definitely want to believe as well. I don't think that we are the only things out there. It's a big, big universe, and I believe that these could definitely be real events that are occurring. There's so many of them, and they can't all be lies, right?
That's right. And in holding on to that belief, you are actually a part of the majority of Americans that believe in UFOs. So, interestingly enough, we have seen a drop in alien abduction stories in the last decade or so. That could be because we as a society kind of have shorter attention spans these days. It could be for a number of reasons, but that does not mean that there are less believers out there. So, Americans have actually remained pretty consistent on the subject of aliens for the last 3 decades. At any given moment, roughly 10% of Americans believe that they themselves have seen a UFO. In the year 1990, Gallup took a poll, and 40% of respondents believed that UFOs were real. As of 2015, that number has jumped up 9%. So now 56% of Americans believe in UFOs.
I'm not surprised. I'll believe in anything at this point. This world is batshit crazy. What? Honestly, UFOs are pretty low on my list of things to believe.
Yeah, I would say that UFOs, out of all the things going on in the world, I don't think that UFOs seem pretty crazy.
No, it's not that hard to believe that
I
those
wouldn't
could
be
be out there.
surprised.
Well, and the Navy just admitted that they had some footage, and I love those. There's three videos that are, very clearly something strange is going on in them. The Tic Tac video, I think they're all from 2014. Or
I was going to say they're older videos, right? I
yeah,
thought I remembered seeing them years ago.
They were leaked years ago, and the Navy finally came out this year and said, those are unidentified flying objects that our aircraft picked up.
They're legit.
Yeah, it's legit, and it came out, and no one cared. because this world is all fucked up.
Well, I mean, it's the year 2020, right? So these stories tend to come and go. But
Yeah.
for ufologists and believers everywhere, it was very exciting to see those videos acknowledged and verified
Yes.
by our U.S. government.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, that's it for our two-parter on Greys and Gray Alien Abductions. Thank you guys so much for listening to our first 2 episodes. We had a blast making this, and we cannot wait to keep making episodes for you all.
That's right. We have some really interesting episodes coming up too. Our next few are focusing on spiritualities, and then afterwards we'll be looking into something more macabre.
And while you're waiting on our next episode, be sure to check us out on Instagram and Twitter at _LRH_pod.
Also, don't forget, next week is our very first Twitch stream. We'd love to have some of you guys come by and watch some weird videos with us and chat about the episodes. Tell us what you like and what you didn't like. You can find us on Twitch at _LRH_podcast. We hope to see you there. Lastly, if you have any stories that you'd like to share with us or any comments on anything we've talked about, you can reach us at thelrhshow@gmail.com. We would love to have your feedback. And be sure to give us a rating and give us a comment on what you've liked on whatever podcast platform you're listening to. That would help us a ton. We'd really appreciate that.
That's right. Follow, like, subscribe, comment, question, contribute.
Please like our content. Help us get the word out there. We want to keep sharing this with you all. And we have so many episodes lined up, and we want to keep doing it after that. So, yeah.
We've also got some really great people that will be joining us. So, again, stay tuned for more awesome content coming your way from the LRH pod.
Yeah, and thank you for joining us here on The Long Road Home.
Bye.
Bye.